Electronic Support Specialist Training Course. These three pieces of equipment are known as a Judge's Booth Controller, referred to as a JBC, an eSlate, and a Disabled Access Unit, referred to as a DAO. The JBC is the heart of any voting line. They are given to the judges prior to Election Day in a white JBC box labeled with the precinct number for your voting location. The JBC contains a flash memory card called an NBB, or mobile ballot box. Each vote is stored on the voting machine that cast it, on the JBC, and on the NBB so as to ensure accurate counting. In addition, the JBC is used in conjunction with the e-poll books to look up and print out access codes for voters. When the JBCs first arrive to your polling location, they will be sealed with a green length of plastic. Do not break this seal without being instructed to by your judge. Next is the eSlate. An eSlate is a self-contained voting booth. They will arrive inside their cases, placed inside a black cage, known as a caddy, for transport. These machines make up the majority of the voting machines on a given voting line. eSlate cases also serve as self-contained voting booths. When a voter has been given an access code by the poll worker operating the JBC, they are sent to a voting booth. Once at the voting booth, the voter selects one of 4 languages using the select wheel, enters their access code, and the JBC sends the ballot for that voter to the eSlate. Once the voter hits the cast ballot button, the ballot is cleared from the eSlate and it is ready to accept another voter. When your eSlates first arrive to your polling location, every single one will be sealed just like your JBCs. Do not break this seal without being instructed to by your judge. Finally, we have the DAO. DAOs are eSlates with additional functionality that allow them to better serve voters who might not be able to vote on a standard eSlate. They are sent out with an audio card that allows for voters to hear the ballot when headphones are plugged in. DAOs will arrive with headphones, which are the audio output for the DAO, and jelly switches, which are tactile input switches that assist in navigating the ballot. DAOs are also able to accommodate sip and puff devices, however, are not sent out with these. They can be distinguished from eSlates by the red stripe on the outside of the case or by being in a cardboard box. Each case the DAOs are sent to your polling location in will be sealed, as with the JBCs and eSlates. Do not break this seal unless instructed to by your judge. Next, we have the e-poll book cases. These are drop resistant and are designed to allow the transport of e-poll books and their accessories without damage. Inside the e-poll book case you will find 4 lightning charging cables, an extension cord, between 3 and 4 iPads. Most of these iPads serve as e-poll books, which have a range of functions including voter lookup and sending live data to the elections department. Some locations will also receive a 4th iPad, used for translation. 3 white charging bricks. These charging bricks are used exclusively to charge the e-poll books. The e-poll books must remain plugged into these bricks for the entire day. Otherwise, the e-poll books will power off at some point during the day. The judge's cell phone and cell phone charger. The judge's phone allows us to quickly communicate with a polling location. It is important that these phones remain on for the entirety of the day, so be sure to leave them plugged into their charger and in a location that offers good signal. The MiFi and MiFi charging cable. The MiFi is a small device that generates a Wi-Fi hotspot and is necessary to allow the e-poll books to quickly transmit information back to the elections department. Make sure that these are turned on at the start of the day and plugged into their charger. However, if your location receives an NP70, please do not turn on the MiFi unless instructed to do so by election staff. We'll go over the NP70 on the next slide. Finally, we have the 3 iPad stands. The iPad stands have 4 magnets located on the blue plate that correspond to 4 magnets on the back of the iPad cases. These have 2 states, open and closed. We'll go over them in more detail in the training video later. These 2 devices are known as a MiFi and an NP70. The NP70 is simply a larger, more robust MiFi. These devices are used by first responders and police units to generate a reliable Wi-Fi signal. Most locations will receive only a MiFi and will not receive an NP70. If your location does receive an NP70, it is important that you open the NP70's case, raise the antennas to the first click, and plug it into a wall outlet. While these devices are able to generate a very strong Wi-Fi signal, they are not able to get a signal through anything, so please place them somewhere near a window or exterior door. When they are functioning as intended, the NP70 will generate all green lights. If it's producing a red or yellow light for longer than a few minutes, please notify your judge. As an electronic support specialist, you have certain responsibilities. These include 1. providing on-site setup assistance at your polling location. This is your primary job. However, your judge may instruct you to perform other duties related to the operation of a polling location, such as greeter or JBC operator. 2. Being at your polling location by 6 a.m. The polls do not open until 7 a.m. However, it takes some time to set up a polling location, so we require that you be on site an hour prior. 3. Make sure that your polling location is up and running by 7 a.m. This is extremely important. If you are having difficulties in setting up your polling location, focus on getting at least one line up and running by 7 a.m. Secondary equipment, things like sanitation stations and sneeze guards, can be set off to the side in order to speed up the process of setting up your first voting line. 4. Each location will be setting up 2 voting lines, one pink, one white. 5. If you have any problems during setup, please call our help desk at 713-368-4001. Trained election staff will walk you through any problem you might have. 6. Make sure you are wearing your county technician badge while at your polling location. Judges need to be able to quickly identify who is working with them. 7. Make sure your cell phone is on. If we cannot get a hold of the judge using the judge's cell phone, we will start calling numbers off a list of poll workers for your location, which your number is on. Your blue folder will be in your judge's supply box at the start of the day. Inside you will find 1. The Harris County Electronic Support Specialist Training Manual. This will cover most of the things we go over here today, so if you have any issues, don't be afraid to consult this manual. 2. Green polling place troubleshooting and observation logs. If you have to troubleshoot in any capacity, big or small, you must record it in a troubleshooting and observation log. We'll cover what it looks like and how to do that in the next couple of slides. 3. Your Harris County Technician badge. And 4. Pen. Please be sure to return the blue folder to the judge's supply box at the end of the night with all of its contents. Now we are going to go over a few key things from your training manual. Be sure to look these over once you have received your blue folder. The wait time feature is used by poll workers at a polling location to give updates on voter presence to the election department every 15 minutes. Once you have set up your 2 voting lines, this becomes your top priority. Be sure to pay close attention to the next slide. You are able to access the wait time feature via your cell phone. If you are unable or unwilling to use the wait time feature on your personal phone, you are also able to perform the checks using one of the e-poll books. In order to give updates via the e-poll books, click the button located in the top right corner of the e-poll book app, represented by the drawing of 3 people. Once you have clicked this button, select the range of voters currently in line at your polling location. In order to utilize the wait time feature on your personal phone, you must first enter the wait time URL. Next, you enter your phone number. You will receive an SMS message containing a 6-digit code. Enter the code, proceed to the next screen, and select the range of voters currently in line. A few key things from your training manual. 1. How to set up and operate the ADA call bell. This includes things like placement, how to operate the call bell, and setup instructions. 2. JBC operator and election day reminders. This includes a brief description of the JBC operator role, as well as important reminders to consider while working as a technician. 3. Greeter role and acceptable forms of ID. This includes a brief description of the greeter role and what forms of identification are accepted by poll workers at a polling location. Anytime you have to troubleshoot a problem, you must record a brief description of the problem, how it happened, the serial numbers of the equipment affected, if applicable, the time, your name, and what you did if you managed to resolve the problem. This is what the troubleshooting and observation log looks like. It's fairly self-explanatory. Fill in the fields with the relevant information. When describing an issue or resolution, try to be as brief and succinct as possible while still conveying the situation. Once a voting line has been set up and connected, which we will cover later in the video, the e-slates and DAO for that voting line will prompt you to assign the booths. This is done by starting with the first machine connected to the JBC and hitting the Enter key on each machine in the order they are connected. Once every machine on the line has been assigned, return to the JBC and hit Done. If you mistakenly assigned the booths out of order or forgot to assign a booth, you can also hit a button on the JBC that allows you to start the assigning from scratch. If the booths were assigned out of order and the Done button was pressed, you can also start from scratch by cycling power to the JBC, turning it off and then back on. We'll go over this later in a bit more detail. When you are troubleshooting an active voting line, you may under no circumstances attempt to troubleshoot any of the machines on that line if a voter is present. This is to avoid causing any concern for the voter that it may be in some way affecting their vote. In order to troubleshoot an active voting line, you must first instruct the JBC operator to stop issuing access codes for that voting line and allow any voter to cast their ballot. Be sure to double check that the JBC operator has stopped issuing access code for that JBC while you are troubleshooting. We are now going to briefly describe some common errors and how to resolve them, and we'll go into more detail later in the training video. If all of the screens on the voting machines go dark and don't power up, this typically indicates that the JBC was not connected to an AC power source. JBCs have two sources of power, AC and battery. If the AC power cable is not connected, after some time the JBC will turn off, and following this, the E-slates. This is resolved by disconnecting the JBC's battery key, connecting the AC power cable to both the JBC and to the surge protector, and then reconnecting the battery key. Reassign the booths and then reopen the polls. If a voting booth's screen displays unavailable, this indicates that the booths were either not assigned or assigned out of order. Cycle power to the JBC and reassign the booths, starting with the booth connected directly to the JBC, moving outward. Once you've done this, enter the Open Polls password and the booths should display the language select screen. Bent pins are one of the most common issues that a polling location can encounter. This is typically caused by the improper connecting of data cables to the pigtails on the E-slates and dowels. Bent pins can cause a wide variety of inconsistent and unusual electrical issues on a voting line, ranging from machines powering down to the screen displaying odd kaleidoscope-like colors. Checking for bent pins is simple. Disconnect the data cable from the pigtail and look inside the pigtail shroud. There should be 15 brass pins, all pointing outward. Look closely, sometimes the pins are not bent but simply pushed in, and can resemble a normal pin if you look at the pins straight on. We'll go over this a bit more in the training video. The E-slates, dowels, and JBCs all utilize the same battery packs. These are 8 D-cell batteries bound together in a case, sharing a connector. The battery packs connecting to the machines use a male connector on the batteries and a female connector on the machines. The male end has a latch that connects to a small hook on the female end. You can just push them together when connecting them. However, when disconnecting, you must push down on the opposite end of the latch in order to release them. They only fit together in one direction, so if they're not connecting, you may have them not correctly aligned. We'll go over this in more detail later. Once a voting line is up and running, the voting machines will all display the language select screen. When a voting machine is on this screen, you are able to check the status of the batteries for the voting machines by looking in the lower right corner of the screen. If it's connected to a battery source, it will display E-slate battery in red text. This indicates that the battery pack is functioning as intended. If the E-slate is not displaying this, it indicates a problem with the battery. Most commonly, the battery has disconnected or the connection is poor. Pull the E-slate out of its slot, flip it over, and check the battery in the compartment on the rear of the E-slate. The JBC utilizes 2 of these battery packs located in 2 compartments on the underside of the machines. In order to be able to draw power from these battery packs, however, the JBC's battery key must be connected to the JBC. The battery key is a small cylindrical piece connected to the JBC, typically by a length of wire or beads. The slot it connects to is located adjacent to the screw the wire attaches to. In addition to being able to check the E-slate's battery status once it is up and running, you are also able to check the JBC's battery status, as well as the AC power status. This is done by looking at the bottom of the JBC's screen and checking for the AC power and battery power status. Restarting the JBC is the same thing as recycling power to the JBC. You are disconnecting both power supplies from the JBC and reconnecting them in the order of AC power first, battery power second. Always remember to insert the AC power cable before connecting the battery key. Now we are going to show you a video that details how to set up a voting line, how to set up pieces of secondary equipment, and basic problems you are able to troubleshoot. Good afternoon. In this video, we are going to go over the setup and basic operations of a polling location. This includes how to set up a voting line, how to set up and operate the sanitation stations, how to set up a sneeze guard, how to set up and operate the curbside bell, the e-poll book case and its contents, how to troubleshoot common problems, as well as how to break down and repackage this equipment after the polls close. This is how to set up an e-slate. An e-slate is a self-contained voting booth. These will make up the bulk of the voting machines at a polling location. The first step in setting up an e-slate is to set the machine on the ground with the handle facing up. After this, lay the machine flat with the Harris County logo facing down and the handle pointing towards you. If you have to reach across the machine to grab the handle, it is facing the wrong way. Next, there are 3 Velcro straps located here, here, and here. Unsecure these 3 straps. There is a black piece of metal near the top of the machine with 2 silver legs coming out either side. We are going to lift the leg on the right side first. We do this by pushing in the silver pin on the right, located here, and lifting the leg once the pin is pushed in completely. Please do not lift the leg and then attempt to push in the pin, otherwise it will jam in place. After this, we will walk the leg we just lifted out towards the right. You will notice a black arrow starts to appear where the leg connects to the black piece of metal. Line this arrow up with the white arrow, and the pin will pop back out, locking the leg in place. If you're having trouble finding the pin, you can look through the pinhole, located here, in order to help find it. Repeat this process for the leg on the left side. Push in the pin, lift the leg, walk it out, line up the arrows, and lock it in place. Please be sure not to lift these legs by their center brackets, as these parts are easily bent. Next, connect the 2 center brackets together. The brackets connected to the right leg has a pin that corresponds to a pinhole on the bracket connected to the left leg. Push the pin through the pinhole to lock the brackets together. On the bottom of the machine, near the handle, is another black piece of metal with 2 more pins sticking out. These 2 pins correspond to 2 more legs. It does not matter which order these 2 legs are lifted. The process is the same as before. Push in the pin, lift the leg, walk it out, line up the arrows, lock it into place. Do this for both legs. In the center of the machine, you may have noticed 4 cylindrical pieces. These are called leg extensions. These leg extensions have one side with a pinhole and one side with a pin. One leg extension goes on each of the 4 legs we just lifted. Set the side with the pinhole over the leg, push in the pin on the raised leg, and lock the leg extension onto the leg. Repeat this process for all 4 legs. Please do not put 2 extensions on one leg, otherwise it will not stand up. Next, we have a piece of equipment that we refer to as a foot. The foot has a pin, located here. Push in this pin and pull the silver portion of the foot out slowly until it locks into the extended position. Do this for both feet. It is very important to extend both feet prior to attaching the feet to the legs. Otherwise, the machine is not stable and could fall on a voter. Once both feet are extended, rotate one of the feet until the black rubber tip, located here, is pointing towards yourself. With the black rubber tip pointing towards you, set the foot on top of the legs. Push in the 2 pins located at the top of the legs at the same time, slide the foot down, and lock it into place. Repeat this for the other foot. Finally, re-secure the Velcro straps to the machine so they do not catch on a voter's clothing. Now we are going to show you how to stand up the machine. The first step is to rotate the machine until the black rubber tips of the feet come in contact with the ground. Once we have done this, we are going to go to the opposite side of the machine, squat down, and grip the machine as low as you can on the sides. Stand the machine up, keeping the black rubber tips in contact with the ground the entire time. Next, there are 2 latches located on the front of the machine here and here. Unsecure both latches and lift the lid, keeping one hand on it at all times. Once the lid is lifted, there is a hinge located here. Lock this hinge by tapping it or pressing firmly. It is very important to lock this hinge in place, otherwise the lid could fall down without warning and hit a voter. This is how you set up an eSlate. These two boxes both contain dowels. The cardboard box on the left, however, contains a dow used for early voting locations. Early voting dowels arrive in a sealed cardboard box along with a table for each dow. Election day dowels arrive in a standard gray dow case inside the caddy with the other eSlates. They both function identically, however the setup is slightly different. We'll now go over the setup for both. This is a disabled access unit, which we refer to as a dow. Dows are eSlates that, when a dow audio card is inserted, allow it to have additional functions that make voting easier for someone who is seeing or mobility impaired. Early voting dows will arrive in a brown cardboard box labeled dow. Inside you will find three things: the dow, wrapped in bubble wrap, a pair of headphones, and a pair of jelly switches. To set up the dow, first remove the headphones and jelly switches from the cardboard box and set them off to the side. Next, remove the dow from the bubble wrap and place the wrap back inside the cardboard box. Fold the box up and place it off to the side. Connect the headphones and jelly switches into the audio ports on the right side of the dow. Set the dow on the table sent with the other equipment to the polling location. Finally, set up the cardboard privacy screen for the dow. This is how you set up an early voting dow. Setting up an election day dow is similar to setting up an eSlate. There are a few important differences, however. The process begins by laying the machine's case flat with the Harris County logo facing down and setting up the legs. The legs for a dow are of different dimensions than for an eSlate to allow better access for voters in wheelchairs. Due to this, standing the dow up requires a bit of caution. When you roll the machine, it will attempt to pitch forward, so once the rubber tips of the feet are in contact with the ground, place your hand on the legs near the feet, hold it down, and rotate your body to the front of the dow. Squat down, grip it low, and stand the machine up. You may require assistance from another poll worker in this step. Next, open the lid and secure the hinge. Following this, pull the voting machine out of its case, turn it on its side, and plug in the headphones and jelly switches. Remember, headphones go in the top port, jelly switches in the bottom port. Next, slide the machine back into its slot by placing it in the slot, pushing up until you feel it click in place, and pull it down to secure it. Pull back on the machine to make sure it's secure. This is how you set up an election day dow. This is a JBC. JBC stands for Judge's Booth Controller and is the heart of a voting line. To set up a JBC, you begin by opening the JBC's box. Inside you will find the JBC itself, a black AC power cable, a white surge protector, paper rolls, a return seal, a scanner attached to the JBC, a battery key attached to the JBC, and a gray data cable attached to the JBC. First, remove the JBC, surge protector, black AC power cable, attach data cable, and attach scanner. Close up the JBC box and set it off to the side. Following this, unwrap the surge protector and plug it into a wall outlet. Make sure the switch located near the cord is switched to the on position. If it is switched on and plugged in, a blue light and a green light will turn on near the two USB ports. Next, plug the AC power cable into the rear of the JBC. Plug the other end of the AC power cable into the surge protector. Within a few seconds, the JBC will power on. Once the JBC is powered on, screw in the battery key located behind the printer on the JBC. The battery key only fits on in exactly one position, so rotate the key on the slot until it snaps into place. Once it is snapped into place, tighten the necklace on the battery key to secure it in place. It is important to plug in the battery key only after turning on the JBC. Otherwise, the JBC could unintentionally run off battery power until both sets of batteries have died. Next, locate where the scanner connects to the JBC. There will be a small black cord running from this connection and ending in a USB. This is the power supply for the scanner. Insert this USB into the surge protector. If both ends of the scanner power supply are plugged in, the scanner will produce a red light when the trigger is pulled. This is how you set up a JBC. Now we are going to go over how to set up a voting line and basic JBC operations. Voting line refers to a JBC and its subordinate voting machines, all connected into an unbroken line. The order of the machines is always the same, regardless of election or polling location. This order is JBC is first in line, all eSlates are second, and the dow is the last machine connected to the line. It is very important to have the dow at the end of the voting line, otherwise curbside voting is not possible. The first step in creating this unbroken line is to take the gray data cable attached to the JBC, shown here, and connect it to the pigtail connected to the top of the first E-slate, shown here. This process is known as daisy chaining. The pigtail has a shroud that helps orient the data cable when connecting. Line up the 3 bumps on the data cable with the 3 grooves on the pigtail shroud. Once you have plugged the pigtail in, you screw in the 2 thumb screws located on either side of the data cable. It is very important that you screw in both thumb screws a little bit at a time, alternating between them. If you screw in one completely and then screw in the other completely, it is possible to bend the brass pins inside the pigtail. Once you have screwed in the pigtail, pull back on each thumb screw. If the thumb screw moves backwards, it has not caught the threads inside the pigtail. Reinsert it and try again. If you pull back on the thumb screw and it does not move, it is secure. Anytime a gray data cable passes the hinge holding open the lid of an E-slate, it must pass under the hinge, like this. If it passes over the hinge, like this, the green lid at the back of the voting booth cannot close. Please ensure that the connection between the data cable and pigtail is tucked away inside of the green lid at the back of the voting booth to prevent it from potentially catching on objects or clothing. Repeat this daisy chaining process all the way down the line. If your line has an early voting DAO, feed the daisy chain through the slot in the privacy screen. Once every machine in the line has been successfully daisy chained and the JBC is turned on and ready to accept voting machines, every E-slate and the DAO should be displaying the booth assignment screen. If any machine is displaying a response test, this typically indicates an incomplete daisy chain connection. When assigning booths, you always begin with the first machine in the line, which is the E-slate connected directly to the JBC. Hit the enter button and the booth will display 01 highlighted in yellow. Proceed down the line, assigning booths in the order closest to the JBC to furthest from the JBC. Once every booth has been assigned, return to the JBC and hit done. It will prompt you to either start over or proceed to the next step. If the booths were assigned out of order or one was skipped, hit start over. Otherwise, hit next. At this point, it will prompt you to enter an Open Polls password. Your judge will have the Open Polls password. Once you've entered the password, the voting line is now up and running. Once your voting line is up and running, there's a few things you need to check. First, ensure the JBC has both AC and battery power. There will be small print text located on the bottom of the JBC screen that tells you the status of the AC and battery power. If AC power reads none, check both ends of the AC power cable as well as the surge protector. If battery reads none, check that the battery key is plugged in as well as that the batteries are connected underneath the JBC. Next, check that every E-slate is displaying the language select screen. The majority of the time, if the E-slate is displaying something other than the language select screen, it indicates a poor connection somewhere in the voting line. If every machine is displaying the language select screen, verify each E-slate is displaying E-slate battery in red text in the bottom right. This indicates that the E-slate's batteries are functioning as intended. If you do not see this, pull the E-slate out of its slot in the voting booth, flip it over, and check the battery connection. Finally, check to make sure that the scanner is plugged in and receiving power. You do this by pressing the scanner's trigger and checking that it produces a red light. If it doesn't, check both ends of the scanner's power cable. The last step before the line is ready is to set up the privacy screens on each of the E-slates. These are located on the underside of the voting booth's lids, here. In order to set up the privacy screen, you need to release the screen from the white plastic clip located here. After unlatching the screen, you need to secure the black loops located on the lower side of the privacy screen to the corresponding silver studs located on the lower right and lower left of the voting booth. Once the privacy screen is set up for every E-slate, the voting line is ready to accept voters. This is an e-poll book case. The lid of the e-poll book case is secured by 2 latches on the front. Inside of the e-poll book case, you will find 3 iPad stands, 3 or 4 iPads, which we refer to as e-poll books, 5 charging bricks, 4 lightning cables, 1 micro USB cable, 1 USB-C cable, 1 judge's cell phone, 1 extension cord, lens wipes, and 1 device called a MiFi. The iPad stands are used by poll workers to sign in voters. They have 2 positions, open and closed. Once the polls close, please be sure to lock the iPad stands into the closed position by pressing the oval button in the center while closing the blue plate, otherwise the e-poll book case may not be able to close. Next are the e-poll books. These are used by judges to look up and sign in voters. Please ensure that the e-poll books are plugged into a lightning cable, which is plugged into a white charging brick, which is plugged into a surge protector. Do not plug the lightning cable directly into the surge protector, otherwise the e-poll book will slowly lose power over the course of the day. Periodically check the e-poll books throughout the day and ensure that they are both plugged in and are connected to Wi-Fi. If they are not, please inform your judge. Next is the judge's cell phone. These allow the elections department to rapidly communicate with the election judges and their poll workers. Please ensure that these are on, plugged in, and located somewhere in the polling location with good signal. Finally, there is the MiFi. This device generates a Wi-Fi hotspot that the e-poll books use to communicate with the elections department. It is very important that you first turn on the MiFi by holding the power button, and once it is on, plug it in. Please ensure that you place the MiFi somewhere in the polling location where it gets the best signal, for example by an exterior door or window. Some locations may have a device known as an MP70. This device serves the same function as a MiFi, generating a Wi-Fi signal. In order to turn it on, all you need to do is open the lid and plug in the cord to a power outlet. If your location receives an MP70, please do not turn on your MiFi unless instructed by election staff. This is a sneeze guard. Sneeze guards are placed in front of the iPads as well as in front of the JBCs. They will come unassembled in a flat box. Inside the flat box you will find a clear barrier, 2 aluminum supports, and 4 thumb screws. In order to assemble the sneeze guard, first line up 2 holes in the barrier with the holes on 1 aluminum support. The barrier should protrude from the aluminum support like this and not sit nearly flush like this. Next, screw in 2 of the thumb screws through the barrier into the aluminum support. Line up the second support with the remaining 2 holes on the barrier. Insert the last 2 thumb screws and tighten. Finally, stand up the assembled sneeze guard. It should look like this. If it looks like this, the barrier is upside down. This is the sneeze guard. This box contains an ADA call bell. Inside the box you will find the base, the 2 halves of the telescoping pole, the transmitter, the receiver power adapter, the back plate, the ADA plate, 2 screws and 2 wing nuts in a plastic bag, and the assembly instruction manual. To assemble the call bell, first remove everything from the call bell's case. Next, set the base flat on the ground. Screw the lower half of the telescoping pole onto the base. Screw the upper half of the telescoping pole onto the lower half. Extend the telescoping pole by loosening the 2 joints, extending them, and then tightening them. Take the back plate and loosen the thumb screw on the rear until you are able to set the ring over the top of the telescoping pole. Align the screw with the groove along the top of the pole and tighten the thumb screw. Line up the 2 holes in the back plate with the 2 holes in the ADA plate. Insert one of the screws through the top hole and hold the plate in place. Tighten one of the wing nuts on the screw until firm. Do the same for the lower hole. Make sure the wing nuts are on the back side of the ADA plate, not the front. Next, plug the receiver's power adapter into a wall outlet, and then into the receiver. Place the receiver somewhere inside of the polling location. Once you have done this, test the transmitter by pressing the gray button located on the front. Following this, speak to your judge to determine where they would like the transmitter to be positioned in the parking lot. This is the yellow sanitation station. Yellow sanitation stations are used only for early voting. While transporting the sanitation station, please grip it only by the handle located behind the sign on the top of the station. The sanitation station has 4 main components: the gel dispenser, paper towel dispenser, trash can, and cabinet, located in the rear of the sanitation station. In order for the gel dispenser to work, it must be filled with sanitizing gel, have batteries, and be switched to the on position. If all 3 are true, it will dispense sanitizing gel when your hand is placed under the dispenser. The cabinet requires a key to open, located inside of your judge's supply box. This is the yellow sanitation station. This is the black sanitation station. The black sanitation stations are used for election day only. They will be delivered to each election day polling location unassembled in a medium-sized box. The box contains the gel dispenser inside of another box and the unassembled black metal pole. Inside the smaller box you will find both the gel dispenser as well as 2 baggies containing screws and mounts. These are used for securing the gel dispenser to a wall. Since we are securing the gel dispenser to the pole, These baggies may be placed back inside the white box. Inside the larger box you will find a telescoping pole, the base, a back plate, a square bowl, a spare bottle of sanitizing gel, and a plastic bag. Inside the plastic bag is a bolt, a black washer, a silver thumb screw, and a silver wrench. The first step in assembling the frame is to insert the silver thumb screw into the silver washer with a rounded side facing down. Next, insert the thumb screw through the bottom of the base and screw the telescoping pole onto the thumb screw. Continue until the thumb screw is hand tight. Extend the telescoping pole to its full height. Make sure it is firmly attached and stable. Following this, slide the black washer onto the black bolt. Place the back plate on top of the telescoping pole with the two larger slots towards the bottom. Insert the bolt through the back plate and into the telescoping pole. Screw the bolt in, using the wrench once you cannot continue using only your fingers. Next, secure the black bowl to the bottom of the back plate. Finally, connect the gel dispenser to the top two slots on the back plate. In order for the gel dispenser to function, it needs to be filled with sanitizing gel, have batteries, and be switched to the on position. If all three of these are true, it will dispense sanitizing gel. This is the black sanitation station. Now, we are going to go over how to troubleshoot some of the common issues at a polling location. If at any point you are troubleshooting any problem on a live voting line, you must first instruct the poll workers to stop issuing access codes from that JBC. You may not attempt to troubleshoot a voting line with voters actively voting on it. E-Slate's screen goes black. If at any point during the course of voting, an E-Slate or DAO goes black while hooked onto a voting line, this usually indicates a poor pigtail connection. While correctly daisy-chained to a voting line, all machines on that voting line will draw from AC power. If an E-Slate screen turns black, this indicates it was running off battery power and is automatically powered down. Check the pigtail connection. Going direct. Going direct refers to disconnecting the pigtail attached to the E-Slate or DAO and connecting the data cable directly to the machine, where the pigtail normally is connected. This is only done under specific circumstances. If you're uncertain of how to attempt this, please call the help desk and we will walk you through it. Booth reads unavailable. If one of the booths displays the message unavailable, after assigning the booths, this indicates the booth was either not assigned or assigned out of order. In order to fix this, cycle power to the JBC and reassign the booths. Booth displays disconnected from network. This message only appears if a machine has been disconnected from the voting line without an access code being entered. Check the pigtail connection and make sure it's plugged in. Privacy screen is off its loop or is crooked. The privacy screen, when fully deployed, is supported by 5 loops hooked onto the voting booth itself. If one of these loops happens to slip off, reconnect the loop to its anchor point. If the privacy screen looks crooked, it is most likely the wire inside of the privacy screen. Untwist this wire and it will return to its normal shape. Pigtail won't tighten. If you're screwing in a pigtail but it feels like it isn't tightening, it most likely is not. Make sure to push the thumb screw down while tightening it. If it still won't tighten, disconnect the pigtail connection and start from scratch. If the pigtail connection is crooked, one or both of the thumb screws may not line up. Bent or recessed pins on pigtail or poor pigtail connection. Unusual or intermittent electrical problems on a voting line are often caused by poor pigtail connections. This is normally due to one of 3 things: a bent pin, a recessed pin, or poorly connected pigtail. You can check for the first 2 by disconnecting the connection between the pigtail and data cable and looking inside of the shroud of the pigtail. There are 15 brass pins located between the 2 slots for the thumb screws. If any of them look recessed or bent, the only way to resolve it is to go direct. If the pigtail has a poor connection, disconnect and reconnect. Headphones not working, jelly switch not working. If the headphones are not producing sound, check that the volume is turned all the way up on the headphones and that they are plugged into the correct audio port on the side of the DAO. The correct port will be labeled with a small headphone symbol. If the jelly switches are not working, verify that they are plugged into the correct audio port on the side of the DAO. This audio port is labeled with a handicap symbol. Recycling JBC power. Recycling JBC power refers to completely turning off the JBC and turning it back on. This is accomplished by disconnecting the AC power cable and battery key until the JBC screen turns black. Once it is powered off, wait at least 5 seconds before reconnecting the AC power cable first, and then the battery key second. JBC reads AC none or battery none. If the JBC displays AC none or battery none, this indicates an issue relating to one or both of these power sources. AC is the primary power source for the JBC and voting line. This is normally caused by the AC power cable not being connected or the surge protector not being on. Battery power comes from 2 packs of D-cell batteries located in compartments on the underside of the JBC. The JBC cannot draw battery power unless the battery key is connected. Check that the battery key is plugged in and that the batteries under the JBC are connected. Check battery connections on JBC or E-Slate. The E-Slates, Dows, and JBCs all utilize the same battery packs. These are 8 D-cell batteries strung together in a black case. They connect to the JBC and voting machines via a small black clip with 2 wires. This black clip has a small hook located here that connects to the receiving end on the voting machines. Double check that the battery end is fully connected to the receiving end. Scanner not working. The scanner requires both a power supply and a good connection with the JBC to function as intended. It connects to the back of the JBC next to the red data cable connection. Make sure that that gray box is screwed into the JBC completely, as well as that the black power cable for the scanner is plugged into this gray box and the surge protector. iPad is losing power. If an iPad is losing power over the course of the day, this usually indicates that the iPad is either not plugged in or plugged in incorrectly. The correct way to plug in the iPad is iPad connected to lightning cable connected to white charging brick, and white charging brick connected to the surge protector. If the iPad is plugged directly into the USB slot on the surge protector, it will not be able to charge fast enough to keep from losing power over the course of the day. Surge protector has no power. If the surge protector is not able to supply power, this normally is the result of one of 3 things: the surge protector's switch being set to the off position, the surge protector not being plugged in, or the surge protector being plugged into an outlet with no power. Verify that the surge protector is on and that it is plugged into an outlet with power. Sanitation station isn't producing gel. If the sanitation station doesn't make a noise when you place your hand under it, verify that the gel dispenser is set to the on position and that it has all 4 C-cell batteries. If it does make a noise but does not dispense gel, verify that the gel reservoir, located inside of the gel dispenser's case, is filled with sanitizing gel. MiFi, MP70, or cell phone is not on or has no signal. The MiFi, MP70, and cell phones will arrive powered off. Make sure that at the start of the day you power these things on. The MiFi is powered on by holding the power button, usually located on the top right. The MP70 is powered on by plugging the power brick into an outlet. The cell phone is powered on by holding the red end call button. Once they are powered on, make sure that they are located somewhere in the polling location with good signal, such as next to an exterior door or window. Keep these things plugged in on their charger for the entire day. Remember, if your location receives an MP70, do not turn on the MiFi unless instructed to by election staff. Once the polls have closed at your location, you are expected to break down the equipment you set up and prepare it for transport. The JBCs are normally set back in their boxes by the judge, as the judge is required to fill out a chain of custody for the JBCs and then seal them. If your judge instructs you to place the JBC back in its container regardless, it's fairly simple. First, disconnect the JBC's data cable from the first machine on that voting line. Disconnect only the battery key and AC power cable from the JBC. Fit the JBC into its slot in the box with its serial number on it. Next, place the scanner in the slot in the top right. Following this, place the AC power cable and any unused paper rolls into the JBC box. Set the data cable in the area next to the top of the JBC. Lastly, wrap up the white surge protector that came in the box and set it alongside the sides of the box. Once this is done, ask your judge to fill out the chain of custody and seal the JBC. In order to disconnect the E-slates, you may find it easiest to first fold up the privacy screens on each of them before proceeding. Once this is done, disconnect each machine from its neighbors. Make sure that you are disconnecting the data cables from the pigtails and not the pigtails from the machines themselves. Following this, set the data cables and pigtails inside of the compartments above the E-slate. Close the lid by pulling on the hinge to the left. Be sure to keep your hand on the lid's handle when you do this. Secure the two latches on the lid to ensure it stays closed during transport. Following this, carefully lower the machine onto the ground until the Harris County logo is facing down again. Disconnect the legs from the machine in the opposite order they were attached. This order is 1. Unstrap Velcro, 2. Feet, 3. Leg extensions, 4. Legs closest to the handle, 5. Brackets on upper legs, 6. Top left leg, 7. Top right leg, 8. Restrap Velcro. Each of the 4 legs must lock into its closed position to keep from opening during transport and damaging the legs. The top right leg is always the last leg to be lowered down, as it holds the top left leg in place. Make sure all 3 Velcro straps are secured firmly to the machine. Once an E-slit is broken down, it must be loaded into the black caddy it arrived in. You must always load the E-slits into the caddies with the handles facing out and the legs facing in, like this. If the handles are facing up, down, or backwards, it makes them far less stable during transport. If the legs are facing out, they can potentially get caught on something during transport and damage the E-slate. Remember, handles out, legs in. These machines can weigh between 30 and 45 pounds. If you're having trouble lifting it, set the machine down with the handle up, grip it with one hand, then place your knee on the side of the machine and kick your knee up, bringing the machine up to your other hand. To break down the dowels, disconnect the last E-slate's data cable from the dowel. Unplug the headphones and jelly switches. If it's an election day dowel, set the headphones and jelly switches back inside their compartment, close the lid, and fold up the legs for transport. If it's an early voting dowel, take the bubble wrap from the dowel, wrap the dowel completely, and set it in the box. Next, set the headphones and jelly switches in the box. Close the dowel's box, load the dowel into the caddy after the E-slates, making sure to place the dowel in one of the center 2 slots to avoid it falling out during transport. Lastly, the dowel's privacy screen must be folded back up and placed with the rest of the equipment. Set every single piece of equipment that arrived in the e-pollbook case back into the e-pollbook case. Each object has a specific slot, shown here, so please make sure that items are going into the correct places. Do not set the e-pollbooks back into the slot standing straight up, otherwise they could be damaged when the case closes. Set them in at an angle, shown here, to be safest. Once you close the e-pollbook case, be sure to latch the lid tightly against the rest of the case. Break down the ADA call bell by first moving the transmitter, pole, and base back inside of the polling location. Remove the ADA plate secured by the 2 screws and 2 wing nuts. Be sure to place the screws and wing nuts back in the plastic bag they arrived in. Remove the back plate by loosening the thumb screw holding it in place. Shorten the telescoping pole to its shortest length, then remove the upper and lower half of the telescoping pole from the base. Remove the foam insert from the case and set the base inside first, the ADA plate second. Replace the foam insert and place the remaining equipment into the case. Be sure to latch the lid shut and set it with the rest of the equipment. To break down the sneeze guards, disconnect the 4 thumb screws from the sneeze guard. Set the screen, supports, and thumb screws back into the box. To break down the yellow sanitation station, first ensure that the gel dispenser is switched to the off position. Next, wheel it over to wherever the rest of the equipment is being set for transport and ensure the cabinet door is locked. The black sanitation station is broken down by first removing the gel dispenser from the back plate. Switch the gel dispenser to the off position and then place the gel dispenser back in the smaller box it arrived in, and that smaller box into its slot. Then disconnect the bowl and finally disconnect the back plate using that black wrench from earlier. Lower the telescoping pole to its shortest setting and then set the pole and base on their side. Disconnect the silver thumb screw and washer from the telescoping pole. Set the bolt, black washer, silver thumb screw, silver washer, and 5/8 wrench into the plastic bag. Place the remaining pieces into their respective slots in the larger box. Finally, set the box and all of its contents back with the rest of the equipment. The final step is to return everything you retrieved from the blue folder back to the blue folder. These include your badge, manual, pen, and troubleshooting logs. Once you've done this, give the blue folder back to your judge. This concludes the Electronic Support Specialist training video. We've gone over how to set up the equipment for your polling location and how to break it down. Remember, you are not alone at your polling location. You are working with others that typically have years of experience. You are there to help them, and they are there to help you. If you have any issues, call us at the help desk. Miscellaneous information. Judge. The presiding judge is the poll worker in charge of a particular polling location. Presiding judges have the final call with regards to troubleshooting, arranging the polling location, and other things related to the running of that polling location. Presiding judges are given the authority of a district judge to ensure the safety and efficiency of their polling location. Dress code. Please do not wear any clothes that indicate political affiliation while working at a polling location. This is considered electioneering within 100 feet of a polling location, which is a Class C misdemeanor. Beyond this, please ensure you are dressed respectfully. Things like t-shirts, shorts, sweaters, and the like are okay. Things like tank tops and flip-flops are generally discouraged. Lunch. How and when you are able to take your lunch is up to the judge at your polling location. Speak to them at the start of the day to determine when they would prefer. When to call the help desk. If at any point you or the other poll workers are uncertain of something, please give the help desk a call. However, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., we typically experience a large volume of calls. Due to this, if the issue is related to something other than the voting lines, please attempt to troubleshoot it first. This concludes the Electronic Support Specialist training course.